Listen, it's May. The portal is closed, which means players cannot enter the transfer portal anymore, but there's still a variety of players who are on the boards who are bringing in Isaac Trotter once again to help us break it all down. Isaac, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, the portal never sleeps. It's mid-May, and there's still a lot of really big names that have big decisions to make, and a lot of really good schools are having some pretty big internal dialogues too, because those boards are constantly changing and adapting as some of the top targets come off the board.
All right, so let's go over some of the ramifications of what we've seen based on what happened in the last week, because unlike last year where you could work back channels to get somebody in the portal in June, that's not an option anymore. So you got to figure things out based on who is on the board right now. My first question for you is North Carolina. They missed in their pursuit of a couple of the big men, Cliff Amurier, Jonas Adu. They still need a big. They need to replace Armando Bacot. Where do you think the Tar Heels go from here?
They're in a really interesting spot because I feel like there's three names that really stand out, but they're all so different. So they have Van Allen Lubin, the transfer out of Vanderbilt. That's an interesting target for them. He's really, really good on the glass. He's a really, really dynamic offensive rebounder. Then you have Ugonna Onyenso out of Kentucky. He's a great rim protector, but you're still trying to figure out what he is offensively. And then it's Coleman Hawkins out of Illinois, who's really going through the NBA draft prospect right now. But if he comes back to school, he's going to command a high dollar number, but he's arguably the most skilled option on the board. He's not necessarily a true five, but he can really shoot it from three. So I'm curious just how Hubert Davis and his staff kind of look at these three big men and what they try to target to pair with Jalen Washington. They still have the Harrison Ingram discussion to play with. If he ends up staying in the NBA draft, that could make them, go after some fours in the portal and which big pairs well with it. So it's a fascinating dynamic here because you look at this North Carolina backcourt with RJ Davis, you get Elliot Cadeau, you have, Seth Trimble's coming back. You have a great recruiting class coming in and you're like, man, this is maybe the best backcourt in college basketball. You add Cade Tyson to that mix. Like, man, that's maybe one of the better shooters in the portal. And it's really about finding the perfect piece to bring this together. And they're kind of working, with their secondary options because I felt like Cliff Amuri and Jonas Adu were those top two options. And now they got to get creative. And if they can hit on it here late in the cycle, I think you could be talking about North Carolina as the best team in the ACC and one of the best teams in the country.
All right, well, sometimes those secondary options work out pretty well. Look no further than Cam Spencer to UConn last year after they missed on Nick Timberlake. So it is about getting that evaluation right. Another team I want to ask you about, Tennessee. They have filled their spot in the middle, but they're still trying to figure out who's going to be the alpha scorer of next year's team. I don't want to say who's the next Dalton Knecht because that bar is probably too high to reach, but where do you see the Vols going to fill this final spot?
Well, all eyes are on Chaz Lanier right now out of North Florida, and he is terrific. Just one of the best true guards in this cycle. Probably a combo is probably the best way to do it, but he's just wired to score. Can really shoot it from three at a high percentage, finished around the rim at a high percentage, and it's really all about confidence with him. He was not a guy that had a high usage role at North Florida until this year and kind of carved out a big-time piece, and he's playing at a different level right now. So I think Tennessee feels really good about their spot with him. Obviously, Kentucky is certainly in the mix there. Maryland has certainly tried to get in the mix. BYU is another team that's been mentioned. But you just look at the core that Tennessee has. You have Zakai Ziegler back. You have Darlington Stone-Dubar out of Hofstra. You have Igor Milicic. You have Jordan Gainey. Like all those guys feel like they tilt towards the offensive end a little bit. And that's with respect to Zakai Ziegler, who's the reigning defensive player of the year. He's a terrific two-way guard. And then you kind of mix in Felix Okpara and Jemai Mashak, who maybe tilt toward the defensive end a little bit. And so if you could potentially put a Chaz Lanier into this place, Cameron Carr, if you want to get Bossy on the horn to talk about Cameron Carr, he'll love him. That's another high upside guy down the line of this rotation. But you add Lanier to kind of this core that Rick Barnes is building, and you feel pretty good about your team, even after you lost Dalton Knecht, who was your leading scorer, even after you lost Josiah Jordan-James, even after you lost Jonas Adu and Santiago Vescovi. So yes, there's been a lot of change, but I'm on the verge of being really bullish on Tennessee again if they can get this Chaz Lanier recruitment done, but it won't be easy.
All right, let's keep it in the SEC. Auburn, they're another team that's done a lot of good work. They had some surprising attrition, but they have replaced a lot of firepower. Still need one more piece up front. Where do we think Bruce Pearl and company could go from here?
Yeah, Samford transfer Achor is on campus right now for a visit. He's kind of the top target for this group. And what do we know about Auburn? They're kind of like Noah's Ark. They want to have two of basically everything. And Chaney Johnson is a really solid 4 that they have. But I think Achor would really complement Janai Broome in that front court well and be another 4 that could be an impact piece. We saw him in the tournament against Kansas showcase what he can do off the bounce. He's got a little bit of a, he's not, I wouldn't say a knockdown catch and shoot 3-point guy, but he can make threes on lower volume. But I love him attacking those long closeouts. And you just think about him, if he's your second best rim protector, like that's a really, really good defense, because you know what Janai Broome can do anchoring the paint. So again, this, like Tennessee, it feels like Auburn is really close to rounding out this roster with Janai Broome coming back. You have Chad Baker-Mazar, you have Denver Jones, who I think is going to be a classic second-year transfer breakout guy to add to Tahad Pettiford. You throw Achor into that mix, and we're talking about Auburn as like maybe the best team in the SEC. And the SEC is loaded. They've been great in the transfer portal. I think you could throw Auburn in that mix too with the type of roster that they're in the process of putting together. And I think Achor would be a terrific final piece.
When you look at some of the best players still left on the board and you see who they're considering, one of the teams that seems to come up repeatedly is Texas Tech. They are certainly still going big game hunting. Who are some of the players that they are involved with at this point?
Great Osberg, I think, is the most popular name, the Mountain West Player of the Year out of Utah State. I think a lot of people have thought that one was going to be tough to take him away from Danny Sprinkle, but Louisville's done a really good job in that recruitment. And I think Texas Tech is obviously in the mix here too. And then the other big name is Trezarian White out of UNC Wilmington. I love Trezarian White. I think he is the perfect Texas Tech type of player. They have so much shooting with this roster, with how they've had it really shaping up. You know what I mean? Like Kerwin Walton, knockdown shooter, Chance McMillian, just a net shredder from outside. Elijah Hawkins, a little bit of a lower volume guy, but he could shoot it at a high level. Darian Williams, a big time sniper. They need that wing slasher. And we're trying to build a roster with like very little positional overlap. You add a Trezarian White to that mix who, yeah, he's not a phenomenal high volume 3-point shooter, but he can get downhill in a hurry. A ton of his shots come at the rim. He shot at a really, really high clip there. He's had some big games against high major teams last year. He feels like a plug and play fit for them. So yes, Great Osberg is the bigger name. I think Trezarian White would be a really nice piece because they have some depth in that front court too, especially if they can get fully healthy. They got Federico out of Pitt, who's a proven, veteran big man, and then Devin Cambridge. If he's healthy, he will certainly chip in there as well. They had high hopes for him last year before he went down with a season-ending knee injury.
All right, now the last team I want to ask you about is Cincinnati, who's really trying to get it right in the portal this year. We've seen Wes Miller make consistent strides in his time with that program, but what do they need to do to take it to the next level?
Yeah, they have one open scholarship left, and they're going big game hunting. And Dylan Mitchell out of Texas is the addition that they're really looking at right now. They have him on campus for a visit. And man, you start talking about what a front court of Aziz Badego and Dylan Mitchell would look like together, and it can be really, really fun. Both of those guys are just jump out of the gym type of prospects who can really protect the rim. You think defensively, those two guys together could be terrific. And, Mitchell has not showcased that he's a big time 3-point shooter, but I think he learned last year at Texas just what his strengths are and how he needs to play. I thought his cutting was really good. I thought his activity level on the glass was excellent last year. And this is a Cincinnati team, like everybody talks in the Big 12, like, oh, wow, like look at what Kansas has done. Look at what Houston has done. Look at Iowa State. You think Baylor, what they've done loading up with Jeremy Roach and Norchad Omier, let's look at Arizona. That's going to be a really good team. If you're looking for a dark horse in the Big 12, I think it's Cincinnati because they have made some big-time moves. You throw Dylan Mitchell into this mix, like I said with Badego, with that young backcourt, Day Thomas is terrific. They have Simas Lukosius. Daniel Skillings is a guy that I thought really played at a high level at times last year in Big 12 play. It's a deep team, and there's a chance for Wes Miller to make some serious noise in the second year in the Big 12 if they're able to get Mitchell on board.
All right, Isaac, as always, you are on top of all of the information. We appreciate you joining us here on the show. And everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this show. One more time, the class of 2024 final rankings, they are now live at 247sports.com. Of course, you can find the latest in the transfer portal as well as those national rankings. We've got everything covered there, 247sports.com. And you are watching the 24/7 Sports channel and college basketball weekly show. We will see you again next week.